Hi everyone, thanks for making the left turn for today, Sunday, October 15th, 2017. I'm George Farrard. Welcome back to the Jack's Left channel and welcome back to History Jacksonville. And today I have a great episode of History Jacksonville for you. Direct from La Villa, one of the older neighborhoods of Jacksonville, I have for you our Union Station. A look at what people commonly call our Union Station, otherwise known as Union Terminal. Also, it's been called Jacksonville Terminal, and that's what it says right out here on this beautiful, beautiful railway station. I have so much to bring you. I have so many pictures to bring you and talk with you about. I'm going to dig right into the railroading history of Jacksonville, starting from 1897, not that long before the Great Fire of 1901, carrying all the way through to today. I'm real excited. This is going to be an amazing episode, and you're going to love it. And I am going to let you know that what there is here at our Union Station is something that's special. It's the convention center right now, the Prime Osborne Convention Center. It's been our convention center since 1986, and I had the opportunity with my family to visit the Ramses exhibit, the Ramses II exhibit, when the convention center opened. So, real excited to bring this to you today. And so, what I'll go ahead and do before I say it, I'm going to go ahead and let you know that from this beautiful railway station, trains arrived and departed beginning on Monday, November 17th, 1919, and ending on January 3rd, 1974. So it's that time for me now to go ahead and say it. I've got a lot to bring you, so let's roll it. Let's take one last look at Bay Street, panning over towards Old Union Station, now the Prime Osborne Convention Center, and down the way to Old Flagler Depot, what remains of Old Flagler Depot. And so let's go ahead and pay homage for just a quick moment to Henry Flagler, who through his industriousness, his construction of railroads and hotels, his boosting of the Florida tourism business in the 19th century, made possible what we have today in Florida. And he made a lot possible with the railroads coming in to Jacksonville. We're a gateway city, and I also want to pay homage to Prime F. Osborne III. He was a chairman of CSX. He also helped to make the convention center possible, which helped to preserve Old Union Station. Very much a civic leader and very much deserving of the name on the convention center. And so now I present to you History Jacksonville, our Union Station. But before we can have this big, glamorous, huge railroad station, we have to start with Union Depot. Construction started in 1895. Construction was completed in 1897. By 1897, there were already around 90-something trains going in and out of Jacksonville. This is before the Great Fire of 1901, and you know, they, as you can see, automobiles hadn't really started up just yet. The dominant way to get to and from the train station was by horse. And we all know how things can tend to smell out on the farm on a hot summer day. And so I'm sure there are a lot of aromas and a lot of things going on. It was a different way. It was a different way of living back then. But years would go by and cars would come and, they still were using the carriages. And of course, you see in this postcard here the distinct archway. Uh, Not a lot remains, of course, of old Union Depot, uh, but you can see in it, and when you go downtown and look at the way things are laid out, that it's not, of course, that far from ultimately the Union Station, which would be constructed later, and streetcars came. So you had another option there at the depot arriving. Look at Coca-Cola, lower left-hand corner there. Okay, so different options for getting into uh, Jacksonville once you arrived. And so you can see kind of the Spanish influence. You kind of see something a little bit different. And, of course, later on, there was the Great Fire of 1901. And further on, of course, we'll take one last look here at Union Depot. But it came time to build Jacksonville Terminal. It came time to build what's called Union Terminal, Union Station. And so they built this amazing railroad station. They built it during World War One, and then World War One ultimately ended and construction continued until it opened in 1919. And you could see, of course, it was a big splash. It was a big hit from day one. Streetcars, cars, trucks. I mean, you think things are dangerous now. Look at how rickety some of those cars looked, right? Okay. These people were not running around in SUVs. Okay. No Lincoln Navigators, no Expeditions. And so these are some interesting views. And then you have artistic views of Old Union Station on postcards. And here you can see where the artist is representing the people, all the different people that are going into and out of this big, grand railroad station and these cars motoring around. So we're going to start now looking at the people, the folks that arrived and departed from Union Station. The opening day, of course, was Monday, November 17th, 1919. And there was always, I can imagine, a lot of hustle and bustle with people coming and going, with approximately 110 trains each day. All these different railroad companies, a lot of times when they called it Union Station, what we're talking about are all these different railroad companies working together in this big, huge facility to get people to and from their destinations. And streetcars would go along Bay Street. There are stories that there would be so much hustle and bustle with people getting in and out of cars, unloading their luggage on the sidewalk from the street, and people arriving, putting their luggage into cars on the street, that sometimes someone would pull along and jump out of their car and just pick up some bags and throw them into the car and drive off. And then someone would be missing their bags. Okay, so crimes would sometimes happen. You have all these people and all these people starting these great adventures on these epic journeys. Again, remember, think back. No airplanes, no interstate highways. Okay, this was the way to go in and out of Florida to points north and west and northwest, and then even south down further into Florida. Now let's take a quick look at this spot, flash forwarded to 2016. Isn't that neat? Okay, so let's go ahead. We'll jump back to, I would say this is around the 1930s. And then we have folks in the main hall with those big tall benches and the big ticket windows. You'll see some more later of how things kind of currently look. But this is back with people waiting in the train station. So, a lot of people, when back then when they traveled, this was a big thing. People dressed up, okay? They put on the ties. The men put on the ties. The women put on the dresses. They like to wear hats. And then, of course, one thing to keep in mind was this was during the days of segregation. And so African Americans waited in one area of Union Station and whites waited in another. Okay, separate facilities. These were different times back then. You have to wonder, where were all of these people going? So you take a look. I mean, if you look at it, people would be going north to see relatives, and then people would be coming here into Jacksonville, looking for different jobs. So it was incredible, all of the coming and going, and this was the golden age of railroading. Okay, the 1920s, the 1930s. Once again, people dressed to the nines, and you can kind of see some of the ironwork. Even today, later on, you'll see some of what you're seeing now, just in more contemporary. Now let's get to the trains. This building, this railroad station, is called Jacksonville Terminal. That's because there's a company that was created called Jacksonville Terminal Company. I take it that it really was the company that made the train station, the railroad station, happen. Okay, so you'll see trains that say Jacksonville Terminal Company, and there were all sorts of different trains that would come through. In a moment, you're going to see a schematic of tracks. And when you look from the air at downtown Jacksonville, heading off towards the northwest, you can see a lot of tracks and see how much land really is still even today utilized by the railroads. While today we only really have a couple freight companies and we have Amtrak, back in the day there were all these different railroad companies. Back when railroading was really, really profitable, back before the airplanes. So there would be all these different specialized trains. The Silver Meteor could take you up to New York City. The Orange Blossom Special could take you down to Miami. There are all these different trains, and so much was happening. This was the golden age of railroading in the 1920s, the 1930s, and the 1940s. Before air travel became commonplace, people were hopping aboard the trains. So I have even more to show you. And so we're going to take a look where people would get on and off at Old Union Station. And check it out. Look at, again, I mentioned earlier, and you're going to get a chance here now to see all of the railroad tracks that existed back then. So many going in towards the terminal and then out to the different destinations. Here we have President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in Jacksonville at Old Union Station aboard the presidential train. Here we see Old Union Station, we see some trains, we see the new, it would have been at that time the new I-95 bridge. With the coming of Interstate 95 and the interstate system throughout the country, people could jump in their own car and drive to different destinations where they couldn't as practically do it before. Also, with Imeson Field becoming popular and ultimately the construction of Jacksonville International Airport in 1968, more people had the option to fly by airplane in and out of Jacksonville. So things began to change. Consumer preferences changed. Investment in the railroad's decline, ultimately, passenger service began to go into decline. Here, though, you can still see around 1959, 1960, you can see a train right at downtown Jacksonville with you see just to the left a small portion of Union Station. And then behind you see the modern, at that time, modern skyscraper, the CSX building. We know it as the CSX building now, and then you see a little more detail on that there with the platform. You see the Seaboard Coastline, Atlantic Coastline building. And then here we have a picture which you don't often see, an excellent picture by Larry Brennan of Union Station, April 1970. And then as we start to take a look, we start to begin to see the last days of Union Station as a railroad station. There's a level of romance to this railroad station, this grand railroad station of the South. So we'll take one last look at railroad operations at Old Union Station, because years will go by after 1974, and the rail yard will be abandoned, become overgrown by lots of plant life, and operations for passenger service are moved up the way to Clifford Lane, the Amtrak station there. And so this, when you look at it, gives you an idea of the vastness of the railroading in Jacksonville, downtown. All these different train lines coming in, and you can see here, you can see the Acosta Bridge, the Main Street Bridge in the distance. In a moment or so, you'll be able to take a look inside Old Union Station after it was renovated. This picture here, actually, if you were to think of it being viewed on old I-95 in the late 1970s, this is what I remember of Old Union Station from my childhood. This is one of the first memories I have of my hometown, Jacksonville. From northbound I-95, looking at this old abandoned railroad station and asking my dad, "Hey, what's that?" Let's now take a look inside Old Union Station as a prime Osborne III Convention Center. So there is a vastness, there is a bigness, I think sometimes even, that you have to see to believe. I was only inside the convention center. I believe I've only been inside the convention center 2 times. The first time, and really the most prominent time, was when I visited the exhibit of artifacts of Pharaoh Ramses II of Egypt. It was an amazing exhibition, and so at that time in 1986, I had a chance to take a look. But it was so long ago, you know, I look at all of this and I go, hey, you know, maybe Amtrak can come back downtown. Okay, so we take a look, and there's that ironwork. If you think back to the picture earlier in the show, okay, there's a lot of things that have been preserved. Here, we're looking at some pictures I took when I went out to film Old Union Station back in October of last year, 2016. So what you're looking at is 2016, a bright, sunshiny day in 2016. There's been a lot of development. as you'll see later on, because we'll flash forward to October 2017. But as we take a look at October 2016, we have this grand vista, not only of the terminal, but as you go back and you look from the terminal entrance looking towards downtown, you get a great vista of downtown, and you'll see that later on in the show. I care a lot about Jacksonville and all the different things that we as people, citizens here, can do. We can try to advance arguments. We can try to kind of get people more aware and get people knowing more about our history. And that is what I've strived to do here on History Jacksonville. So again, you have the sunlight and how it cascades through the windows upon the building. And it's been our convention center since 1986. We made quite a turn from abandonment to restoration. But now, in a rare moment here on History Jacksonville, I am going to advocate for change. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right here. I'm going to do it right now. What I want to see change is not this beautiful architecture, which we should preserve and keep forever, as long as we possibly can. What I want to see is the convention center go elsewhere, and we bring trains, real life operating, fully operational trains, passenger trains to Jacksonville. Imagine arriving one day, this is the morning of October 15th, 2017, but imagine one day arriving, and when you arrive by train in Jacksonville, that's what you see. You arrive in Jacksonville and you can always catch a JTA bus to go somewhere in the city. Eventually the Greyhound bus station will be moving closer, so there'll be options there. Or you can take a taxi or an Uber, or you can even walk, possibly, if it's a good weather day. And you have access eventually to whatever the Skyway will ultimately become. There are so many unique opportunities that are available if the leaders of our city will do the right thing. Now, down the road, we do know for one thing is that the convention center is somewhat dilapidated, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about that briefly, and I, of course, do have some pictures to show you. Let's take one last look, though, at the historic Old Union Station and look at what has been built in to the function of the architecture already. I mean, they built it for you in 1918, 1919, okay? And you've got some history here. And you've got some access to and from I-95. Let's bring passenger trains and passengers and business to La Villa. Let's bring it to downtown Jacksonville. Let's bring it to Duval. Let's bring it to Jacksonville. Let's bring these trains and this business from where our heritage really began when it came to railroading. Let's bring it back to Old Union Station. And if you think about it, there's a lot that we can do to make it happen. And if you think about it, the access from I-95 would make for even better convenience to hop a train. And I think great for business folks, and great for Jaguars fans, and great for college football fans. Imagine you just take a train, you're right there. You're right there on Bay Street. Okay, who could ask for anything more? Here further down Bay Street, we see the old Union Station with the appendage that was added. And I remember when that appendage was built, I kind of at the time thought it kind of looked, I'm going to say it right here, and I'm sorry that I have to say it, it looked kind of dumb. Okay, I felt like they could have done something better with what was there, which was the station, the railroad station to begin with. That side was beautiful. It's just trying to find a way to do it properly. And of course, you can see, though, what back in the 1980s was fashionable and was kept up in 2017 is not so. All right. Now, there's some development that's happening just to the north of Old Union Station, Prime Osborne Convention Center. So that's a JTA building that's under construction. So there is a lot happening downtown. I have my eyes closer and closer on things. I want to thank you for watching. It means a lot to me. And, you know, we have later on the 6th season of History Jacksonville some more shows. So stay tuned. Take it easy. See you later.